I am Joanna Berger. I have my master's in applied animal behavior science from the University of Edinburgh in Scotland, and I run my own business, the Animal Behavior Consultancy. My business has gotten very busy. I've had lots of clients, and I'm training a lot of animals of various species right now. So I was planning to put more up on my Patreon, but then right as I started, like right when I made my account, is when my business really picked up. I'm also taking a dog training professional course at the moment, so that has been taking a lot of my time as well. That will be over this summer, so I only have a few months left. But it's really at the challenging point right now. We're working on a lot of pretty complex behaviors and creating behavior chains. And it turns out that the dog that I'm using for that course is a dog that actually has anxiety and a lot of phobias. And so the training is a little more challenging than it might be with a totally well-adjusted dog. So yesterday I actually sat down with the owners of that dog and we discussed the possible causes for his anxiety. And it turns out that he was viciously attacked by an aggressive German Shepherd when he was just a few months old. He was a really small puppy. He was being walked by his owner and he was on a leash, and then a large adult dog ran out from the woods and ran directly to the little puppy, grabbed him and shook him nearly to death. And we think that his brain may have been damaged during that attack. His spleen was damaged and he had to have a lot of veterinary care early in his life to treat his digestive issues and the medical issues with his spleen, and his spleen had to be removed. So then there were some other early life experiences that were really stressful for him in addition to that. But the way that this dog is learning is different than most of the dogs that I work with. So I like to talk about like the fact that everyone has a unique nervous system and brain, and we all have unique ways of learning and thinking. So I'm a big advocate of neurodiversity, and I'm quite open about the fact that I have an anxiety diagnosis myself, and that is what gave me empathy to anxious animals and helped me get into my line of work. It's a delicate balance, like, making sure that I manage my own anxiety and take care of myself in addition to helping treat animals who have anxiety and various other behavior issues. The little story about the puppy who I'm now training as an adult dog being attacked by that aggressive German Shepherd is sort of a segue into the topic of this video, which is going to be canine aggression. I want to start out by saying that the thinking among really qualified dog behaviorists, including Ian Dunbar, who has his PhD and did his PhD thesis on dog social behavior, and Dr. Sophia Yin, who has passed away but was a really amazing veterinary behaviorist. And there's quite a lot of scientific consensus on this, that dog aggression is a symptom of underlying stress. So dogs who bite or attack are feeling like anxiety and fear themselves, and there is this underlying emotion that is then causing the aggressive behavior to occur. So I treat a lot of dogs who have aggression issues, and also, like I said, a lot of anxious animals of all species. That's kind of my specialty, is treating very anxious animals and training them using the best possible methods and doing very careful behavior modification, which is, I'll talk more about my techniques later, but to help them become less anxious. And so the way I explain this to a lot of my clients is that most people have heard the term like fight or flight. And most people know, and like at least a little bit of psychology information has gotten into sort of general knowledge regarding the fight or flight stress response. So stress stress creates physiological changes in the body, and stress, I could go into great detail about the stress response and the neuroscience of it, but the way I'll explain it to clients who don't have any background in psychology or neuroscience or medicine, I'll say basically the stress response, when your pet is feeling stressed, or when your pet is stressed, there are changes to the heart rate, there are changes to respiratory rate, there are breathing changes, there are chemicals that are circulating in the body and affecting the brain, including adrenaline, and that is the stress response. And then the animal can either flee, which is running away. So if you see a dog hiding underneath a chair or hiding underneath a table or running away, and maybe some dogs run, upstairs to the bedroom of the house and hide in there, or run and hide in the, I've even heard, I've met some dogs who run and hide in the closet or in the bathroom, or even in the bathtub if that's somewhere they feel is safe. So that's the flight response. And then, by the way, my dog just walked upstairs, so we might see some of this response here. Duncan, good boy. So I also have a dog who I adopted who came to me with a bunch of anxiety issues, and his name is Duncan, and working with him got me into my line of work because I wanted to learn everything I could to help him. And so I used my background in psychology to start working with him, doing operant and classical conditioning and phobia treatment, and then continued to study that, worked as a vet tech for about 5 years, and then went and got my master's in applied animal behavior and animal welfare science. Duncan, good boy. And, continued to train my dog and manage his behavior, because it can be, for dogs with severe anxiety, which my dog has, it can be sort of a lifetime of management and behavior modification. But he has come a really long way. So while I'm on the topic of anxious and aggressive dogs, I guess I could introduce you to him, since he's right at my feet now. Let me see if I can move my camera and show you Duncan. Here's a baby. Oops. Yeah, there he is. Okay. Anyway, back to what I was talking about. So the stress response can also be the fight response. And you can think about fighting as a defense behavior. So if a dog is feeling very stressed, they can either run away and hide to escape the stressful situation in the environment, or they can defend themselves by fighting. And this is true of multiple species, but we see it a lot in dogs, since dogs are out and about in public spaces more than rabbits or fish or birds tend to be. I do also train birds, some of whom have issues with aggression as well. But anyway, back to the focus of this video being dogs. So a lot of people get really confused about this, and there's a lot of stuff in pop culture that is confusing, and there's a lot of misinformation floating around. So unfortunately, a lot of the time, people will have an anxious dog, and instead of working to decrease the dog's stress levels and decrease the anxiety, which will then decrease the aggressive behavior, what sometimes happens is they'll put like a choke chain or a prong collar or an electric shock collar on the dog, or use a spray bottle or throw an object or shake a can of pennies, make a ton of noise, or use different collars that squirt out different scents and chemicals to scare the dog. So all of those techniques are I tend to think that they're very dangerous to use with dogs that have any underlying anxiety, because they can backfire. Because if you are feeling stressed and scared, and then somebody chokes you or somebody hits you or yells at you, you're likely to feel more stressed and scared. You're going to have your anxiety level, your anxiety is going to get worse. And so since the aggression is part of that stress response, if we're making the dog feel more stressed, we're actually going to very likely to increase the aggression. So I have had a lot of dogs come to me as a behaviorist who have previously been on prong collars, and their anxiety levels have just increased. Usually this anxiety comes from experiences in early life, and those experiences are usually before people get their dog as a pet. They happen, before you get your dog, while your dog is living with the breeder, or without a breeder if your dog is feral or stray. But birth to 3 months is the sensitive socialization period for a dog. And anything that happens or doesn't happen between birth and 3 months is really key to your dog's later behavior. So usually when I do my behavior consultations, I'm taking a behavioral history and I'm asking a lot of questions about that time period. Like, I want to get as much information as I can about dogs' early life experiences, and usually I find that something has gone really wrong during that time. And then the dog has this underlying anxiety, which is later exacerbated if the dog is put on like an electric collar or a prong collar. Then, what was I going to say? So then, another factor is genetics. So there is a genetic component in anxiety, and same for humans, but also for other species of animals. If parents have anxiety, it can be passed on to the offspring. So I'll ask a lot of questions about did you meet your dog's parents? Did you, and even the grandparents of the dog or further down the line. So if you are thinking about getting a new dog, it's really important to do a lot of careful research about where your dog is coming from and what the environment is like for the puppies, and the behavior and any issues with anxiety with the parents of the dog and the grandparents, and just really ask a lot of questions of any dog breeder, do a lot of research. Sometimes we won't be able to have those answers. If you're they're, for example, with my dog, I don't know his history because I adopted him when he was 1 to 2 years old, and we don't know anything about his parents. All I know is that he was found as a stray, and then taken to a rescue. So I can tell from his behavior now that something was not ideal, and he developed, a lot of anxiety. And then, it's been a lot of time and work learning about how to manage that. And I can talk more about the techniques that I use to treat and manage anxiety and decrease stress for pets in later videos. But since there's so many misconceptions out there about what aggression is and where it comes from, I really wanted to take this time to just clarify that I believe, and other scientists believe, that it is stress, that, a heightened level of stress, and this emotion of fear and this feeling of anxiety that is underlying and then causing the aggression. So you want to treat that. Briefly, a way that I treat that is by using primary reinforcers like food to teach the animal to have new positive associations with the things that frighten the animal. So I can pair food with something that the animal is scared of. I want the scary thing to be at a very far distance, so that I'm not sending the animal into this like hyper stressed state and panic. And if there is a lot of underlying severe anxiety, then we'll start with the scary item really, really, really far away, or at an almost imperceptible level, so that the animal can stay as calm as possible. And meanwhile, I'll feed the animal their favorite food, and quite a bit of it, or we'll play their favorite game with a toy. Sometimes, toys can also be a really great reinforcer. Petting can help for some dogs, but a lot of anxious dogs don't like being petted. So I might do another video about that issue in the future too. But that's what food is something that all animals like innately. So that tends to be the first thing we go for to use to pair with anything that is stressful. And then gradually and systematically, the dog will be taught this association between the scary object or situation and the food, and then the animal seems to become more confident and braver and less anxious, and then we can very carefully, systematically, gradually take the animal closer and closer towards the frightening thing. This should be done with somebody like me, who is an animal behaviorist and has a lot of experience with this process, which is called desensitization and counter conditioning, and a lot of experience really being a great observer of animal behavior and animal body language. It takes a lot of experience and training to be highly skilled at reading really subtle signs of stress and noticing the very subtle fear behaviors that our dogs display. Most people, and even a lot of dog trainers and other dog professionals, don't have that training and don't have that experience observing behavior that carefully. So it can be a bit of a problem if you have an anxious dog and you take them to just a regular trainer who isn't experienced in behavioral observation and desensitization and counter conditioning, then you may accidentally be putting your dog into too stressful of a situation. And the problem with that is if your dog is already feeling stressed and then you're exposing your dog to all these new things that are scary, you might be exposing them at such a high level that your dog's feeling like increasingly scared. So it can backfire and they can become sensitized instead of desensitized. And unfortunately that happens a lot as people try to socialize their dogs, who they got the dog after the dog was 3 or 4 months old, and the dog came from actually a really bad breeder or a really bad situation, and then has this underlying anxiety, and the new owner thinks they're doing the right thing and doing a great job by just exposing the dog to all sorts of situations, but sometimes that does backfire because the dog is just feeling more and more stressed, and it's not being done in a carefully planned way, and the dog's behavior isn't being closely observed. So I really love it when dog trainers refer clients to me, and there are animal behaviorists. I have my master's degree in applied animal behavior science, and I have other certifications as well, and I'm working toward some further certification at the moment, and always continuing my education. And I am not yet ACAB certified, but I do plan to be. My master's degree is one of the prerequisites for becoming ACAB certified, but there is a directory, and you can find people who are already ACAB certified, or CAB, which is CAAB, and those are animal behaviorists who are a really good resource. CAAB CAB certification means that they have a PhD in animal behavior, and ACAB, which is the associate version of that certification, which is what I plan to get in the future, and what my master's degree qualifies me to apply for that, because that requires a master's degree in an approved animal behavior program. Other courses that I've done include the Living and Learning with Animals professional course by Dr. Susan Friedman, my bachelor's in psychology at the University of Virginia, in which we learned about operant conditioning and learning theory, and that included animal training. And then I also learned about treating phobias in humans. And let's see, I took a course on dog aggression with Dr. Ian Dunbar. I'm a member of many professional organizations like the Pet Professional Guild, and the a few different dog training and bird training organizations, and have attended different conferences like the Animal Behavior Management Alliance conference, where I presented my research on parrot behavior. I'm working toward Karen Pryor Academy dog trainer professional certification at the moment, and then I'm in the process of finding a good mentor and continuing to work toward my ACAP certification. So those are some qualifications to look for when you're looking for a behaviorist. You can book an appointment with me through, you can email me, or my website is animalbehaviorconsultancy.com. My email is animalbehaviorconsultancy@gmail.com. And I do offer virtual and in-person I also can refer you to a qualified behaviorist in your state if I am not able to come out to you, which I recently did for a client who was in Georgia who contacted me. Unfortunately, veterinarians and many dog trainers don't get quite enough training in actual behavior science. So, and then there are a lot of people running around calling themselves behaviorists who actually aren't qualified, or a lot of dog trainers who take on aggression cases when they really shouldn't be taking them on because they're really not able to do desensitization and counter conditioning properly, and don't understand operant conditioning training well enough. So unfortunately, you do have to be aware of that. But I do encourage you to be a responsible dog owner, and if your dog is, has the history of biting or attacking, lunging, growling, kind of freaking out all of a sudden, or if you're seeing any other behaviors that concern you, please do contact me or another actually qualified animal behaviorist, and we can help. And there is actually hope for your dog, but it may be quite a bit of work depending on the severity of the case, but it is possible. My own dog has made huge progress, and I'll talk to you more about this topic in the future. Thanks for watching. Bye.